That one, we have two notes to present. Say slender to minimize flood impacts. What we mean by slender is a very thin deck, and the type of railing on the bridge has to be something that allows water to flow past. As you can see, this is just a very simple bridge, and it's about 260 feet long. I think before, we're talking about a 400-foot long bridge. And so you can see by going smaller, you are saving some money. It gets it to a point where it's not impacting the flood nearly as much. The railing is about 3 foot 6 inches tall. We're trying to keep the railing as light and airy as possible to let water and so debris doesn't catch. And the deck itself is only 1 foot thick, including the beams holding up the deck. So what we do is go with more columns in the river, but that allowed the deck to be very slender. We feel, based on the hydraulics of the area, that that's really the general type of bridge you're going to have in this area. So I think that's sort of the main question I was trying to get at is, what's even possible given the restrictions on flood? What type of bridge? And it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but it needs to have a profile that's very slender and shallow. The page after that shows a flood elevation. It actually shows the profile of the bridge. You can see where the 100-year flood is. This is an accurate depiction of where the flood will be. You can imagine the bridge being inundated by a good 10 feet of water over the bridge deck. And so that's a lot of force on this bridge, so the bridge needs to be robust enough to handle those kind of hydraulic pressures of that water rushing by quickly, getting hit by logs and those kind of things. So that leads to another element. The bridge has to be stout enough to withstand some impacts of logs and things flying down the stream. Gets into the other element I mentioned, the railing design. On the next page, we show a photo of a typical railing that just uses wire cables. This is about as light and airy as you can get. This allows the water to go through, doesn't block the railing and pick up and hold back like a dam. That, however, gives you kind of a modern look, so it gets into the aesthetics of the bridge. They didn't do bridges with thin cables way back when, so it's not a old-timey looking bridge. It's more of a little bit of a modern feel. Again, I'm not saying this is the exact railing. I'm just giving you one photo of a typical cable railing. I guess one big element of this bridge on the next page, even with a very slender, light, airy bridge, it's minimal profiles we could get away with and make it stand up to all those forces, you still have to do quite a bit of work on the bank to let the water to compensate for the blockage that even that slender bridge is going to have. It's going to back water up, and so to counteract that, you have to excavate the embankment for a good 400 or 500 feet downstream, and that's pretty significant. I mean, what we're talking about is some earth movers getting out there, carving out 4 or 5 feet of fill, moving that fill somewhere else, and then doing the minimal you have to just to keep it from eroding over the future. Probably take out some trees in the area. There's lots of ways of doing that, but that's one way that makes it work and meet the FEMA requirements. So it gets into that, element. Is this bridge feasible? One, does it fit your budget? Two, does this fit your taste? Can you do that to your park? Does that even fit with the community? Would they accept that kind of earth moving happening and losing some trees in that area? So I want to point that out. That's one of the likely requirements of the hydraulics.
Peter and I discussed some of this excavation in the past, and the depth from the normal water level up into the park was a fairly, what I considered, shallow excavation. Is it possible to have a deeper excavation that does not go up so high into the park?
Yes,
we don't own the parkland. That's a county property.
You got to be some partnering there.
So yeah, we're going to have to go over and
yeah, you couldn't excavate below what they call ordinary high water mark,
right,
for environmental reasons, but that's pretty low. So if you stayed above that and carved over more, yeah, that's
So
That's
it
certainly
wouldn't-
possible.
So it wouldn't go up into the park as far?
That's right.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you can play with it different ways
Yeah.
in the model.
Yeah, but if you excavate so deep below, we just have to look at the grading, make sure all the grading works and all that, because you cannot have a bench and then with the soil just
Right.
straight
Oh,
up.
no,
So,
you'd have
yeah,
to do
things
something to that,
Yeah.
to that embankment if you have a steep, I know that. I just,
yeah, things like that. So we have to just play around
this,
with that.
like I said, we don't own this property, so anything that we come up with, we'll have to go over and ask permissions and discuss with the county commissioners, possibility to allow this to occur.
But there's a lot of flexibility in exactly how you
Yeah.
carve it out. That's a good point. When we looked at the construction cost of this new shorter bridge, 260 foot long, came up with a price of around $300,000. And I apologize, I think the printout you have has a lot of X's on it.
Yeah.
And what the breakdown there, the bridge deck itself, which is the beams and the deck, and this is a concrete deck, by the way, not a wooden deck. It's about $100,000, that first line. The second one shows foundations and piers. Those are all the columns holding it up, and the piers and drilling into the ground. That's about $70,000. These are our rough estimates. The site work itself, now that includes all that excavation we talked about. Also, there might be some impacts to the trails, so we threw in a bit some money over. Some sidewalks had to get redone, about $80,000. And then the railing on the bridge itself is approximately $50,000. So altogether, that's adds up to, you know, it's the more exact number is $301,900, just under $302,000. You know, one thing to consider also is the cost of the, I guess, the conspan bridge, the prefabricated bridge. That's a heavier, you know, stockier truss member that when we put that in the model, it really blocks so much flow, we felt like we couldn't make it work. But those costs per linear foot of bridge, you know, is about the same as this bridge. So this is $301,000 I'm putting out. That's roughly equivalent to what you get from the Contact bridge and other type bridges. So they're about the same. The next thing to get into is about the design effort involved with this. And I know there's a lot of sticker shock, and it's on our end too, because you look at a smaller bridge like this and you think, how can our, you know, A fee and engineering fee be so much a portion of the construction cost in comparison? There's a lot of elements of that effort in the design. It doesn't matter whether you're building a big bridge or a little bridge. You know, and just to kind of go through them, but geotechnical investigation, you have to go check the soil to see how deep you need to go to hold up the bridge. You have to check it also for scour to make sure, you know, what type of materials out there that you need to improve so it doesn't just scour away over time, create maintenance. Surveying to go out there is about $10,000. Get a surveyor. Again, we have to survey downstream, upstream away to decide how you want to carve out that bank. Even things like an accessibility review is a state requirement to make sure it meets the ADA and the Texas accessibility standards. There's preparing bid books and get this project out with the contractor and management that's associated with that is some money. It goes on. Site grading in this area. It's not just designing a bridge, but it's, you know, designing all the topography and how the site gets graded to meet that bridge and excavation. Even an environmental review. You know, we believe this layout that we showed here will have pretty minimal environmental impact, but you still have to make sure you comply with all the NEPA laws, and that takes some effort to make sure that's being done. One of the big costs is just hydrology and hydraulics, and that's all the effort to make sure you comply with FEMA. We've done some rough calculations, but it had to be fine-tuned for the final bridge design. And then there's a big process to get it submitted to FEMA and get what's called a letter of map revision to get this bridge in the FEMA system. And to do that all by the book, there's quite a bit of analytical effort and then a lot of clerical effort to go with that. The structural design of the bridge itself is kind of the biggest component. It's about $37,000, but that's just a portion of all these others. So